Welcome to Metro Talk. I'm Kent Shuffle. Thanks for being with us. Jim Schrader, the publisher of the Telegraph, is alongside. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, Kent.
And Sam Stem, the president and general manager of WBGZ, is here as well. Welcome, Sam.
Glad to be back.
And thanks to our studio audience we have here today.
Big studio audience today.
They wait for tickets like they do David Letterman. This guy's been lined up in the heat all morning waiting for tickets.
We just need the camera to turn around now to show the studio audience. Sam, Collinsville has become the first Metro East community to outlaw saggy pants. Was that a right move on the Collinsville City Council's part?
Well, it's going to be awfully inconvenient because I'm going to have to pull over on the highway before I get there and pull my pants up.
I think they were worried about a little saggier than yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't they have anything more important to do in Collinsville than to worry about that? Now, honest to goodness, we're all of the age that we don't understand why kids want their pants hanging down halfway to their knees. Just like our parents didn't understand why we wanted our hair long and our sideburns long, and you know, we wanted to wear faded jeans with bell bottoms. But give me a break. They've got to have more issues to deal with in Collinsville than trying to outlaw saggy pants. And this is one of my pet peeves. Legislative bodies, be they city councils, county boards, state legislatures, or the Congress of the United States, think that they're going to be able to solve any problem by simply passing a law. I guarantee you that if you could go down into the police station in Collinsville and talk off the record to the cops down there and ask them how much time and energy they're going to spend in enforcing this new ordinance in Collinsville banning saggy pants, they'll laugh. They'll tell you it's a joke. So why does the city council even bother with it? Well, because they can beat their chests and they can puff their chests and they can tell the world, we solved a problem. We passed a law. And it'll have no effect whatsoever. And in my mind, it kind of makes them the laughing stock. In terms of the saggy pants, this too shall pass. Somewhere down the road, some kid's gonna look at some video of the old days and see people wearing their pants up around their waist, or maybe even halfway up to their chest, and say, "Hey, that's different. Let's do that." And pretty soon, all the kids will be wearing their pants in that manner, and the saggy pants will be a long forgotten fad. So, come on, City Council of Collinsville, get a life. Do something that's important, do something that matters, or do nothing at all. Sometimes we're better off if legislative bodies do absolutely nothing at all. Just go home and don't bother us, and don't pass any stupid laws that the police can't enforce anyway.
The only bit of my clothing I ever wish had been outlawed was those double knit pants. Because I was driving down the road one day and dropped a cigarette on those suckers, and they just started burning and melted into your skin. It's amazing to me that Alton City Council has nothing else to worry about.
Collinsville.
Collinsville has nothing else to worry about. What I suspect is going on here, and this is the real underlying pink elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. Let's look at the demographic that is primarily responsible for wearing the saggy pants. Primarily, it is African American, though there are also, certainly a fair number of Caucasians that are wearing the saggy pants. Some of them aspire to be troublemakers, gangbangers. They like to hang out at the wrong places sometimes. I wonder if some of this is just a wink to the cops that, look, if you got 10 or 12 standing on the corner, and you've got no other reason to bust them up, just show up and say, hey, we want to talk about the baggy pants things, because they're hanging around loitering, they're showing up at Dairy Queen and hanging out, or they're hanging out at McDonald's too long and they're having to walk around with one hand in their crotch to hold up your pants. This is what you really wonder is what's going on. Similar situation to when the three of us were young teens, and the torn jeans and the bell bottoms and the hippie garb A lot of parents and a lot of lawmakers didn't like that either because it was the wrong type of person that was wearing it. The clothing is not the problem here. This is an excuse, I think, that some of these aldermen had to bust up some of these gangs, and I agree with Sam. The cops are going to look at this and say, you guys are crazy. If you think I'm going to try to write a ticket and make it stick for a $100 fine because some kid was walking around with his pants drooping around his hips, and all he was showing was a pair of black boxers that show less skin than a pair of swimming trunks, good luck with it. The $100 fine for the first offense is not going to stick, and the right cop, if they want an excuse to pull over and talk to some individuals that are loitering, he doesn't need saggy pants or any other reason to stop other than, hey, what's going on?
Well, and I'll take it a step further. I'm sure if they do try to enforce this ordinance, somewhere along the line, I'll bet the ACLU jumps in there, because we still have a First Amendment. And it's just a way of expressing yourself. And as Jim said, if all that's showing is some boxer shorts, there's nothing lewd about that. Now, if their privates are hanging out or whatever, well, now you've got indecent exposure or lewdness or something like that.
And we already have laws for that.
But to say, you can't wear your pants in a certain manner is a violation in my mind of the First Amendment, and I don't think it would take a court very long to say that and strike the whole thing down. So again, it's just a
and
huge
let's take
waste
it
of
even
time.
a step further. Our mothers, if they would have sat in a church service or gone to school with their brassiere strap, and I'm using that word purposely, okay, their brassiere strap was hanging out of the side of their blouse, or, heavens to Betsy, they were wearing a tube top and still had a strapped bra on, purposely showing off their underwear, they would have been mortified. There is no way that you would walk around showing those articles of clothing.
I would have been mortified.
Well, of course, exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Well,
But that's a style now too, and I haven't heard anybody say nobody should be able to see little Susie's purple bra strap.
But what about my rights if I don't want to look at that guy in the black boxers or the tidy whities? Or...
Well, the Constitution that allows him to wear them allows you to turn away and not look.
We need to turn away and take a break. We'll have more right after this.
Hi, I'm Audrey LaCasey, and I'm from Alton, Illinois. I love music, and that's why I came to Lewis & Clark. It's been an amazing experience here at Lewis & Clark, working with students that are so talented, coming from all over the area, and they work so hard to follow their dreams. The music faculty at Lewis & Clark they're fantastic, and they're there every step of the way to push you to follow your dreams. One of the unique opportunities that I have had at Lewis & Clark is being able to record my own music with a fellow student here. Being able to record our music has opened doors for us in the music industry. My long-term goal is to finish here at Lewis & Clark and then to transfer to a four-year school and finish my degree in music performance. I would recommend Lewis & Clark to another student because it is definitely a great place to get started, and it can open so many doors for you.
Big dreams and good grades aren't enough to get into college. There are actual steps you need to take. Finding someone who can help is the first and most important. For the next steps, go to knowhowtogo.org.
This is Metro Talk. I'm Kent Scheffel. Sam Stem and Jim Schrader are here. Jim, the Edwardsville School District is going to reduce its bus fleet by 25% to cut back on transportation costs. It's going to begin working with the Madison County Transit District to help get some of those students to school. Are we going to see more of that in the future? Is that the right thing for the school districts to be doing, is to shift some of that transportation burden to the transit district?
I don't know if it's the right thing or not, but what else do you go after? The state of Illinois still owes the Edwardsville School District in excess of $4 million from last year. I think there's still about that owed to Alton. Virtually every school district in the state is owed money. And those school districts have had to figure out how to continue to operate during the 2009-10 school year without those funds. This in part is to reaction to that, because not only has the state not made up the deficit of what they owe these school districts, they also have cut the funding for transportation, the reimbursement for next year, the next school year, in addition to questionable whether or not they're going to be able to stay up on their payments for the school funding for next year. So I think Superintendent Hightower is saying, okay, which is better here? Inconveniencing a few parents or a few students and requiring them to find another way to school, or heavens to Betsy, walk to school, uphill both ways with cardboard in their shoes in the blinding snowstorm, or do we cut teachers? Do we cut programs? Do you all pay for play on every extracurricular? What else do you cut? I think, personally, I kind of like the walking won't kill you idea, because, and we don't have to, we all know the joke about walking uphill both ways and all that. But kids in our day did walk to school. Buses were for the kids that lived out in the rural areas, and those were the choices. The rest of us, for the most part, walked. But here we've eliminated a lot of community schools because we didn't have the funding. We now have gone to community unit schools that people travel from further distance. That necessitated more buses. That and a certain laziness, I think, on a lot of our parts, rather than kids walking to school or finding another way. Hightower is saying we have a lot of empty Madison County Transit buses running around here. They run similar routes to what the school buses run. And with a little coordination, we can have a win-win here possibly. Fill up some of those green buses that are running around close to empty and eliminate some of those big yellow boxes that we can't afford to pay for. The bus companies are not owned by the school districts. They are contracted with the school districts. They don't take IOUs from the state. They can't buy gasoline and pay for buses and pay for drivers based on an IOU that is going to come from Springfield at some point in time. I talked to Senate President John Cullerton last Friday and asked him specifically, and the new budget, about school funding. It wasn't cut, and they hope to stay up with payments this year. And I said, but what about the payments for last year that are still owed? And he says that's going to require the state borrowing money, and nobody's willing to do that right now. So those schools are going to continue to wait for those unpaid funds. I don't know what else you cut.
Sam, Edwardsville's cutting 25% of its bus fleet and is going to rely more on Madison County Transit. Is that the way school districts should go?
Well, from a taxpayer's perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense. As a taxpayer, why should I pay for one set of transportation for school children, another set of transportation for the general public, and then sometimes we're paying for separate transportation for the elderly? Why can't we get to a point where everybody coordinates, where the school district coordinates with the transit district so that the limited resources coming out of the taxpayers' pockets are used in the most efficient manner. And Jim alluded to it. Everybody in the public, it's a standing joke. Yeah, we've got public transportation here in Madison County, but nobody rides. I shouldn't say nobody. For some people, it is a very vital link, but it is terribly underutilized. If we have a need, if we have these children who need to get from point A to point B in order to go to school, and the buses are running on those routes, why can't we have some coordination to the benefit of the taxpayers who are paying the bills? That just seems to make sense. Now, I know, somebody's going to say, oh, well, the public buses aren't equipped the way the school buses are, and the drivers don't have the training that the school bus drivers have, and, it'll be hard to mete out discipline. But, I think you can overcome those things. And the bottom line ought to be, if a kid habitually misbehaves on a public bus, the public transportation ought to say, well, you're out, and it's the parents' problem then to get them to and from school, as opposed to coddling them and letting them misbehave on the school bus. So I think it makes some sense. It just rankles me to continue to pay the tax to support Madison County Transit and see them building these monuments to themselves called transfer stations that nobody uses, and to see these buses running around, empty. We used to have the smaller buses, which, when there were 2 or 3 or 4 people on them, well, they looked maybe half full. And then we got the big longer buses, and when questions were asked about that, well, why did we buy bigger buses when nobody was filling up the smaller buses? Oh, well, we didn't pay for those, we got a federal grant. Well, that's my money too. That's coming out of my pocket. So now that we've got the big buses and they're running around empty, why not utilize them to help the school districts out and to help families out, get their kids to and from school, and perhaps ultimately at a savings to the taxpayers? I think it's a good idea.
I think I'm going to ride on one of those buses just to get the free wireless access that we pay for on those buses as well. All of those green buses are running around with wireless access. It's got decals on the back, free Wi-Fi. Somebody's paying for that service too, and that would be us. So you got an empty bus that's driving around with internet access. Students might use the internet access to ride to school in the morning. I think it's a great idea.
Should Governor Quinn cut the funding for districts where they have transit service and restore the funding for school districts in the rural areas where there is no mass transit?
Well, to me, I absolutely agree with Sam. It seems to me that Madison County Transit could be a partner in this and alleviate some of the need somewhere along the way.
We need to take a break. We'll have more right after this.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to check out the radio broadcasting program in WLCA with Mike Lemons.
Have you ever listened to your favorite radio station or your favorite disc jockey and say, I could do that? Or maybe you're the type of person who says, I could never do something like that. Well, with the help of first-year Mass Comm student John, we're going to show you just how easy it is. Each voice intro starts with talking about the band that just played, and we add a station identifier. Next, you want to offer some information that may be of interest to your audience. And finally, tell the listeners what the next song is, who sings it, followed by another station identifier. John will do one live now.
Silver Sun Pickup substitution on WLCA. The Big Pink released their debut album called A Brief History of Love. This single is off that album. It's The Big Pink with Dominoes. It's on College Radio's Best 89.9.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
What's that? I don't know. Something I kind of made. Ooh, what's it do?
What do I do? Well, thanks for asking. I ring my bell and I like to dance. What do I do? Well, thanks for asking.
Ow! Yeah, it still needs a little work.
Anything's possible. Keep thinking. Get started on your own inventions or just play some games at inventnow.org.
Sounds like you could use some Van Gogurt. It's fortified with arch-rich nutrients to improve your math and reading skills. Catch!
Van Gogurt, thanks. So what's the deal with your ear?
Always with the ear, huh?
Feed your kids the arts. For 10 simple ways to learn how, visit AmericansForTheArts.org.
You're watching Metro Talk. I'm Kent Shuffle. Sam Stem and Jim Schrader here. Sam, Macoupin County has voted to reduce the size of its county board by 1/3. Is this something other taxing bodies, other governmental bodies should be looking at as a way to reduce expenses?
Well, I learned the hard way that I don't think this is a good idea. In my younger days, when I was less experienced and maybe a little bit more foolish than I am now, which is hard to believe, I thought this kind of thing was a good idea. But the little bit of savings you garner, I don't think is worth it when you look at the fact that people are less represented. And one of the really important parts of our system of government is that it is representative government. I go back to many years ago now. Alton was considering cutting the size of its city council in half, from 14 to 7. I was all in favor of that. I thought, well, good. We'll save all that revenue that's going to those 7 aldermen, and we had 2 aldermen per ward. But what I learned the hard way is that people did feel that they had less representation. In Alton, there are 7 wards. Used to be you had 2 aldermen per ward. If for some reason you had difficulty reaching 1 alderman, or perhaps you had a personality conflict with that alderman, you had somebody else you could go to as a backup. Now when they reduced the council in half, you only had 1. If you had a hard time getting a hold of him, or if he wasn't responsive to your needs, now in the city of Alton, you feel less represented. Also, I made this statement one time and made a lot of enemies down at City Hall, but looking back, I said, back when you had a council of 14, if you had 3 or 4 idiots on there, it was no big deal. When you have a council of 7, you get 3 or 4 idiots on there, look out, the idiots are in charge. So I really do think the little bit of savings that Macoupin County will get by cutting their board by 1/3 is really not worth it in the overall picture, because I think people deserve as much representation as they can get.
There's a problem with only having 1 publisher and 1 radio general manager, too. You got 1 idiot and you're stuck with them.
Just trying to figure out which is which. Yeah, which is which.
Well, that's probably an area where we might not agree.
Well, we have to understand what led to this in Macoupin County. Just imagine the hit from the sales tax revenue in Macoupin County in the last 5 years when 2 active coal mines closed down and stopped paying taxes into the county. It's been a huge economic drain on Macoupin County. While Sam had some great points about you lose some representation and you lose a little bit of money, in the case of Macoupin County, a little bit of money is a fair amount of money to that county now, because they have lost so much of their sales tax revenue. To me, it showed that they were willing to make some sacrifices. It doesn't take effect till 2012, after the election of 2012. And it's reversible. If the fortunes for Macoupin County were to change, just like in theory, if the population of the city of Alton were to start increasing rapidly, that could be, the city of Alton could go back to 14 representations, or could go to more than 7 wards if they chose to with the right legislation. Macoupin County could reverse this. But I think it demonstrated on that county board's part that we are in tough times. We don't have a lot of money. It seems to us that if we want to get the ball fields cut and the weeds mowed, maybe we'll cut back some of the aldermen and spend that money somewhere else.
Sam, do we need to cut back on the number, or do we just need to cut back on the salaries?
Well, again, I think the amount of savings there is fairly negligible. I think before you have to answer either one of those questions, there are a lot of other things you can look at cutting. But, certainly good, worthwhile public servants might be willing to take a little bit of a pay cut, as opposed to having their workload increased. Because quite frankly, if you cut the size of the county board, each one of the remaining board members, in theory, would have to work a little bit harder. Maybe they wouldn't, and then that's when the constituents suffer.
It also depends on what, certainly different counties pay board members different amounts of money. Some of them pay per diem, some of them pay mileage, some of them pay per meeting, some of them pay per meeting whether or not you attend. I mean, it's just all over the mark.
And quite frankly, I don't understand why they have to pay them at all, because school boards don't pay their board members, and there never seems to be a lack of school board members.
And in many cases, not only do they pay their aldermen, they also pay for their hospitalization and pay into the pension funds for many of them for what is supposed to be a community service, at best, part-time job.
I got a hunch if you said, hey, if Macoupin County said, hey, we're not going to be able to pay our county board members any longer, you would still have people willing to run for the county board just because they like being in charge.
Sam, the Department of Children and Family Services stopped working with Catholic Charities after the not-for-profit agency refused to recognize the state's new civil union laws. Court has now ruled that DCFS needs to continue working with Catholic Charities and placing children in foster homes, adoptive homes. Was the court correct in its ruling?
Well, that ruling was correct in that it's a temporary ruling as this case is further litigated. And it's a pretty complex issue, and yet in some regards it's simple. The Catholic Charities organization, which does adoption services, says, our Catholic tenets say that we're not going to allow gay couples to adopt children. They don't allow that now. Where it has become an issue is the state says, well, now we have this new civil unions law, so you have to recognize that. So if you get a gay couple coming forward, you have to give them consideration for adopting children. And Catholic Charities says, well, we can't do that because that's contrary to our Catholic beliefs. And so, both sides are kind of at loggerheads. Neither one can give. I think ultimately you can find a way to make this work. That, state and federal funding goes to Catholic hospitals, even though their religion doesn't allow them, they won't do abortions. And so, it's been worked out where, okay, we can fund all other services, we just won't, and we won't require you to perform abortions. Some say, well, that's discrimination against women. That's discrimination against those who believe in the right to choose. I think ultimately there's a way that it can be worked out. Catholic Charities says, hey, look, there are many other fine adoption agencies that will provide adoption services to gay couples. They can go there. So these people are not being denied services. So, it's pretty complicated, but I think ultimately cooler heads will prevail and they'll be able to work it out.
Court ruling correct?
They will work it out. It's a temporary stay. They'll get together. They will negotiate some type of a solution here. It's not going to fix the problem immediately, however.
That's going to do it for this edition of Metro Talk. Thanks for being with us. Sam Stem, the general manager of WBGZ, has been here, along with Jim Schrader, the publisher of The Telegraph. I'm Kent Scheffel. Don't forget, you can get us anytime on the web at lc.edu.